Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here as always. Today we've got another Cardano focused show. We're actually talking about a form of Cardano NFT, well, an NFV, and we'll talk more about what that is. We've got Patrick, otherwise known as the Unsigned, on Twitter to talk about this really cool project. So thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Most definitely, most definitely. So if you could quickly give everyone a little bit of an introduction about yourself, how you got in the space, and what led you to build in the Cardano world.
Sure. So I'll keep it nice and quick. My personal background, my day job, if you will, has really been in enterprise technology, mostly in financial technology, so fintech.
Cool.
So I was personally got interested and exposed to Bitcoin back in 2015, 2014 or so, and didn't know too much about it, but was following. And then when it became a bit bigger, it became an enterprise use case and DLT when blockchain was a bad word.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been following it, investing ever since. And then in June of last year, I guess now, I happened to full circle be watching your show when Alexander Watanabe from the creator of Unsigned Algorithms and then NFT Maker Pros, Patrick Tobler were talking, and that just really hit a sweet spot of technology, art, and kind of blockchain fintech for me, which got me buying my first ever NFT, which was an unsigned algorithm. And that was the kind of rabbit hole that I fell into. And I have to say, it's been really fun to be building in a system. And Cardano is, as we've seen over the past couple of months, really just growing and feel really fortunate to be a part of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I think a lot of people get into the space in a similar way. They might already have an interest in technology. They might already do that for a living, and they come across this whole space for whatever reason. Maybe it's through investing, maybe it's through a friend, maybe it's through interest in technology, and the rest is history. So congratulations to you for starting to build in the space, because I think that's the coolest thing. That being said, I alluded to it in the beginning, maybe a little teaser, if you will. Can you explain what you're working on and what an NFV is?
Yeah, so after getting into the space and I'm really spending a lot of time with the unsigned algorithm community and then getting to know a lot of the other NFTs going on, a lot of what we were exploring was, art versus utility and what could happen with this new structure. What does it mean to have an NFT and besides just ownership and all sorts of things. And so all throughout those conversations, there was always this tension of two things. One being that NFT is such a broad term that how do you categorize or know the difference between them? And then two is really this distinction between utility and art and whether or not they could even align, right? And most people are taking and adding roadmaps and things like that, but the NFV or non-fungible visualization was a concept that kind of emerged through all of this, saying, well, what's another way we can explore using blockchain and NFTs and really try and tackle this, maybe combining art and utility. And I think when you look back in history before the internet, I mean, like way back in history, a lot of us would have really beautiful things that were also useful.
Mm-hmm.
And so this concept came out of that, and we made the first proof of concept that launched in December last year on the 21st, called the Epoch Clock. And so that is the genesis of it, and certainly can kind of dive into how it works. But it is an epoch clock that tells what we call Cardano time, which is that every 5-day epoch interval.
Yeah, the cycles of Ouroboros consensus. If for folks that are really interested in the interworkings, you should actually really look into Ouroboros as a protocol. Really interesting stuff. Proof of stake in Cardano. But please do walk through sort of what the Epoch clock is and how that's a representation of this sort of visualization mechanism for NFTs, something that you can take ownership of.
Yeah. So the heart or the structure of any given NFV is two pieces. At the bottom of it is a dynamic data source, and the dynamic part is really important because it's taking into account time. And it's about data that changes over time. And so some things are real time, like counting down a clock. Some things may only change once a month. You never know. But just the fact that there is a change in data over time, and that data source is connected to a NFT, which is a visualization of that data. And time is one of those things that in the physical world, I think we all kind of see this as true, right? We kind of know we have some standard data source of time, and
Mm-hmm.
we've got infinite ways that we're expressing it. We've got watches and clock towers and sundials and hourglasses, and but there's also, kind of in an abstract way, the sun going by, right? Time is being expressed all over. So how can we bring, and what does it look like to bring a visualization, which is currently stuck in a little bit of that statistical charts and graphs and pie charts and things. It's kind of stuck in that world. How can we make a structure that says, let's give everybody or anybody who wants to access to this dynamic data source and let them tell that story visually? And so to do that, we had to obviously come up with the first one. And the goal from here is then to say, well, who else wants to tell the story of the first NFV, which would be Epoch time? But there's no difference and no reason it couldn't be any other data source as well, which I'm sure we can get into.
So effectively, you're basically taking a source of input. Maybe that's data from an oracle. This could be like price data for cryptocurrency. This could be something else like sporting event results and all sorts of other things. You're basically capturing that in a visualization, which is then almost taken as a snapshot in time or in a moment in time that becomes a digital asset for you to own and collect.
Yeah, and I think the idea is whenever you actually look at it, right, it's sort of connected to this data source,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever you look at it, you kind of get that sense of it, right? And again, this is something we all kind of do intuitively a little bit when you are looking at your weather app.
Mm-hmm.
If you see a cloud and it's raining, you got those little icons, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's raining. You don't need to know how much rain. You don't need how little rain. You don't need to know the real data. You just need to know, oh, it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the use case is kind of, I don't know, we're just kind of end this a little bit, but what's exciting mostly about it is by kind of proving these examples out and then saying, hey, how do you want to tell the story? Most likely the best metaphor, right, that tells the story of visualization, that tells the story of data, we aren't going to be able to create, so we want to let everybody who wants to create it. And I think it really means that you can find the visualization that really speaks to you, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
say there's an example of your health data. Let's take it really personal. And we get these labs from doctors after you get a blood work or something. Well, they tell you what's good and bad, but it's really hard to kind of grasp that. But you could imagine your portrait or something in some digital image that when you get a bad report, like your health, your portrait looks bad.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's a good one, your portrait looks great. Or if you're talking about price data, if the price of ADA has gone down 10% in the last week, it's it's a bear. And if it's gone up 10% in the last week, it's a bull.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to these images or these visualizations to gather intelligence, right? To gather insight about what the data should be telling you. And we do this all over the place, but now all of a sudden you can own it, and also we can make it more accessible for more creative folks to tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of if I'm talking about NFVs more casually, I call it the metaphor maker, because I really think there's a chance to start taking metaphors that we use all the time to explain things and tie it together to data and really like make the metaphor true, like to your data.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when we were talking about this before we set up this episode, the first thing that I thought of is sort of like capturing the life of a football fan. When I say football fan, I mean soccer. I'm just like that. People get annoyed with me all the time. I say, "Oh, it's the proper term for soccer, football." But
Wait, who's
it's
your
like
team?
I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan.
Oh, I'm a
So
United fan. Keep
all the
going.
people
Keep
in the
going.
comments that like Arsenal, I get it, okay, or
Yeah,
Chelsea,
me
I
too.
get it. Um, but yeah, basically, it's like when your team, my wife teases me all the time. It's like your team loses on the weekend, or you lose your midweek match. Life's not good that day, right? You're really frustrated. Whatever. A piece of art that represents the sort of the ethos or the sentiment around your football club is one example that I thought of around this simple data feed, but changing that piece of that visualization or that art depending on that. And I can imagine this being in public spaces, right? Having a screen that displays this and it changes based off of real data. And so I think to me it really strikes me as like NFV being sort of a framework rather than this, hey, this is one project that you can go buy and flip, right? This is just a framework for the idea that you can visualize data as an NFT, if you will. Am I correct in that
Yeah,
assumption?
yes. I'm glad. I'm really glad you described it that way. And there's a lot of technical, um, what we're talking about of what's today versus what will be is there's a lot of technical work and investigation to do, and
Mm-hmm.
security and all sorts of things. Because to your point around oracles, data,
Mm-hmm.
keeping all of that is not lost. That it's not the simplest thing to do, especially when you get those more complex use cases. But something
Right.
that you just tapped into that's really important, that it is more of a framework. And the reason that I find that exciting is, we have to make the first one to kind of show the example of it,
Mm-hmm.
but the not being a project and saying tell time, tell the sentiment of your favorite football squad, tell your pick your thing. The rarity, all the other things that people look at, or what resonates with you with that piece of data, that sentiment is can be really diverse. And if
Mm-hmm.
you want a one of one special thing, well, an art you can commission one.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a creative that wants to make a project around this NFV data structure, go for it. Or if you want to make a really common every band's thing, clock, you name it, that's also fine as well. And I would say part of that motivation was to make it a little easier for the creative folks to be able to tell their story or to kind of contribute without necessarily having to even make a project. Actually, just say, hey, I can make a pretty cool clock, or I can make a pretty cool health visualization, or whatever it may be. And the other thing, just to that same point, there's no reason that data couldn't turn into audio or other things. So
Mm-hmm.
while we're calling it visualizations, it may end up being a framework for audio as well, but haven't quite gotten that far yet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a common thing for a project to start somewhere or a framework to start in one place, and then the community takes it in a totally different direction or builds things that you would have never imagined. And I think that's the coolest part about building something like this. That being said, what is sort of the 2022 imminent future for this NFV framework? Like, where do you envision it going this year? What are your goals around this?
Yeah, and I think to maybe make a more concise idea of what you're talking about is we know what programmable money is, and
Mm-hmm.
we're asking what's programmable art, right? So there's
Yep.
a reason that this is on the programmable.art site. And to your question about this year, the next step is sort of twofold. One, we have the fully on-chain clock, which is the one that we'll show in this episode. But then we want to move to the off-chain clock first. And the reason that matters is it really opens up a lot of people participating. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where it makes it a lot easier to submit some images and assets to make a lot of different ones. So that'll
Mm-hmm.
give us this next small step to concept done, quite a community engagement, creative people doing that done, probably make a few more data sources. So
Mm-hmm.
something that's important to there is time or intervals can be told in different ways. The first clock is sort of rotational, kind of like an analog clock, but the next one could be like a countdown, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the year, working with someone, at Ava Ginger on Twitter, she's studying art history at Oxford, and so her and I are contributing to her thesis
Mm-hmm.
at her master's in art history, talking about programmable art as well. So there's going to be some legitimate art historical research into NFVs, what they are and how it works, what it could be. And then in addition, finding what other data sources people care about, creating more data structures, and also exploring the technical side. So we have a lot of great technical folks that are helping us. Epoch Blockchain was the group that helped us first with this
Mm-hmm.
Epoch Clock. We've got some folks in what we're calling the PART Guild, or the Programmable Art Guild,
Mm-hmm.
who are really early and kind of thinking through this and exploring it. Some folks have done some on-chain art in the CNFT space.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really around exploration. But I think setting up that framework, getting a little more structure around it, I would hope by the end of the year, the Part Guild is truly something.
Mm-hmm.
But at first, I think it's try 4 or 5 out, see what people like, see who gets interested. And, if all we do this year is make thousands of clocks that people love, I mean, that's not a bad idea. But
Yeah.
I would love to start exploring some of those more use cases like you're talking about, was how do we explore sentiment or price or other information we care about, and make it so people find the data and the visualization that speaks to them, so that even if you have two different visualizations, the people can get on the common kind of thought or understanding about what that data means. And I think that's a really hopefully important outcome of NFTs in general, which is instead of hoping one person can tell one story to everyone, we get the data, which everybody should know about, but we get all the story, all the visualizations or stories told in ways that resonate with each of you. And so we can come to a more common understanding of what that data means.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I always think about around the digital art space, especially programmable art, is that art is already very subjective. And so the more that you can give that art life that extends beyond sort of a single form, the more easily it can appeal to more people. And that is a really cool byproduct of this type of concept that, you know, I'm quite fond of. But I do have one question for you.
Sure.
And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be curious about this given the,
Sure.
the context. Why did you choose Cardano as the platform for this?
Yeah, I related back to, I did try to get into DeFi and Ethereum a couple years ago, and it was okay. I mean, it was fine. It was just a little clunky, and it just something I kind of did, but it didn't really stick, and
Mm-hmm.
which is okay. I'm neither here nor there about it. But when I saw the interview and then I started using Cardano, it was the first time I truly used a proof of stake system.
Mm-hmm.
And when I already knew about it, had experienced what it was like to not have that, and then started transacting and working. And then while I had known about it, I think it's actually kind of the same story, these visualizations. It's one thing to read about it, but it's another thing to kind of see it in action and just see it put into place. So one reason was kind of getting on a proof of stake system, seeing how well it was working and really appreciating that. Two, the community that was in the Cardano ecosystem, I think they're really welcoming. They were very open to showing me to the right places, to connecting me with the right folks. So I got to meet and really accelerate my adoption. I felt very, oh, it's okay that you don't know about every little bit of Cardano. You know, we'll teach you, we'll show you, you know, come do it. And I also think at the time, Twitter Spaces has become a really kind of good way to kind of engage. And so it did make it just onboarding a lot easier as well. So the combination of the Cardano as a blockchain from a technical point of view, my background is kind of in enterprise technology. So I kind of think about that. I like the ETXO model. I like the determinism. I think that is really matters to me, proof of stake, obviously. But most importantly, just the conversation that was going on and the fact that something like unsigned algorithms was on there. It just felt like that fit the type of conversation I was trying to have.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things combined really made it easy to get involved. And if anything, I need to sleep a little more and do a little less, but I can't seem to help myself. So
Don't we all, man?
this global thing is kind of tough.
Yeah, no, I totally, I feel the same way at times because even if you're in one ecosystem, you feel like if you stop, it never stops moving, and so you always feel like you're missing stuff. So I know how that feels.
You keep up with at least two, right? I mean, that's not even the subsegments, so I'm not even sure how you do
Yeah,
what you do, but that's a
I
different problem.
honestly I'm not sure either. It's at times, but that's neither here nor there. The last thing I wanted to ask you is if someone wants to get connected, they want to maybe they have an idea, maybe they want to even they just want to get a clock. How can they connect with you and with the NFV community on social media and stuff like that?
Sure. So my Twitter's at the underscore unsigned underscore. I keep trying to get the person that has one without it, but
Mm.
they don't seem to respond. Programmable.art is the website exclusively for NFVs. So
Mhm.
that's this idea where we're going to explore what programmable art is. And then it just so happens that the clock is also the founding token of something called the ADA Cafe. And the ADA Cafe is a new, I'll call it organization that has a lot of the Twitter spaces that are in Cardano. It's got a technology component and a governance component. So adacafe.io is where you can go buy a clock and become part of that ecosystem.
Nice. So I will leave those links in the description because that's what us YouTubers do. And
That's
I would
right.
also recommend that people do check out those spaces because the Twitter spaces that I've, spectated on and listened to are always really interesting, especially in the Cardano community. I feel like they're always pods of people who have very interesting viewpoints. So I would highly recommend you do that. And please do go follow Patrick, the underscore unsigned underscore. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. Everyone's always like, why aren't you at Hashoshi? It's just the number 4. That's always been my nickname in my family is 4. So
Yeah,
there you go. That's why. But
that's right.
Patrick, honestly, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing this information about NFVs. Of course, there will probably be more opportunities for us to chat about this as things
I would
develop.
love to. I'll keep you posted. Thank you so much for what you've done. I mean, like I said, you're the whole reason I'm even doing this, to be honest, because I would have done it without unsigned algorithms, which was here. So I love that it's kind of full circle that way, and appreciate you've been doing this for a long time. It's a great resource. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor. It's an honor. And so thank you everyone who's watching. Thanks for checking out the channel. Thanks for checking out this video. If you have questions for Patrick, please leave them in the comments below. And until next time, cheers.